My sermon is entitled Spirituality in the Trenches. So if you saw that ahead of time, you might have been wondering what I was going to be talking about. Well, I'm not going to be talking about wars like on the battlefield, but in spirituality, the great teachers have said that it really is about a great struggle, but the struggle is not about things in the outer world or outer conditions. It's an inner struggle to find a place of peace and awakening and realization. So what is it in our lives that keeps us from experiencing that which we're seeking for? We are a group who comes together in covenant, and we have many different beliefs, which is a wonderful thing about being this, but everyone is here presumably because you're looking for something, and something that will help to bring you fulfillment. So you might ask yourself, well, what are those things that seem to stand in the way of that? What are the obstacles? And all of us have plenty of obstacles. I mean, there may be obstacles with health problems, there may be obstacles with situations in our jobs, our family, our financial circumstances. And if we're pursuing any type of spiritual path or practices such as meditation or contemplation, those are the things that when we sit down and try to get quiet inside, tug at us and, oh, I need to take care of this, or, oh, if only this would go away, or if that would go away, then everything would be okay. So it's kind of the spiritual version of living for the weekend, only the weekend never seems to come. Or if it does, it doesn't last too long. So what contributes to this state of being, which we would probably all like to extricate ourselves from? Well, I think one of the primary causes of that is operating from a dualistic frame of reference. And what does that mean? It means basically the, quote, norm of the human condition, in which a vast majority of conscious beings perceive themselves as being separated from all that they experience, whether it's other people or nature or whatever they're looking for on their spiritual journey, and somehow they're trying to get from A to B. Somehow they're trying to move this thing that is embodied in this physical container and bring about a stage of transformation to get it to a different place. But it seems like a just very difficult task, because it may seem very slow and there's always things that get in the way. But I'll imagine that each of us here has had at least one or more experiences in our lives when we felt a deep sense of relatedness or connection with something around us. It could be someone we were just very deeply in love with. It could be some music that just transported us, or beautiful poetry. Or it could be some wonderful place in nature, in the mountains or the forest or the ocean, where for a time we forgot about ourselves and our day-to-day problems, and we experienced this just very deep connectedness. And we probably felt a sense of rejuvenation, a sense of harmony, a sense of beauty that lingered after the experience was over. And then probably we were having a great desire to get back to that state somehow. Maybe not the exact same experience, but something that would replicate it. So what are some ways we might be able to experience something like that in our day-to-day lives? Because the hustle and bustle is going to keep going on. I mean, there's always something to deal with. Well, if we believe what the scientists are saying, what the physicists are saying, I mean, they're saying that reality is deeply interconnected, that our usual sense of time and space, in a way, is an illusion of our consciousness being just locked in to assuming that what we see is all that there is. And if you've kept up with any research in quantum physics, there have been many experiments to show that action can take place at a distance instantly, not at the speed of light, instantly. So presumably you could put two paired particles at opposite ends of the universe, and you flip the spin on one, and instantly the other one would change. And physicists have found that there are effects that move backwards in time. So in our usual conditioning, we're thinking, well, we're kind of stuck with everything that's happened to us, and we hope that the future is going to look better, but how could something in the future possibly have an influence on the present or the past? And yet here are these high-powered scientists saying that this is the way reality is, even though it may not make much more sense to them other than it fits with the evidence of that. So we're going to try a few experiments today to see, by just doing some simple processes, if we can alter not only our own state of being, but also if we can experience on the first one a difference in the atmosphere of the room here. So I would invite you to close your eyes for a few moments and just notice your breathing. Don't try to change it. However it is fine. Just feel the air coming in and out of your body. And notice how you're feeling physically. There may be places of tension or discomfort in your body. And then notice your state of your mind. Notice the thoughts that are probably passing through your mind, and there may be thoughts about things that will happen later today, or things that happened yesterday, or in the coming week, or they could be about challenges in your life. So without trying to change them, just be aware of those. And then notice your emotional state of being. Do you feel happy? Do you feel sad? Do you feel worried? Do you feel anxious? And again, without trying to change anything, this is just simple presence and awareness, just sort of taking a gentle note of your state of being on all the different levels. So we'll call this the default state. This is what happens if we don't do anything to shift away from it. And now I'd like you to just hold the thought and the feeling with each inhalation and exhalation that you're drawing in feelings of love and compassion for any being anywhere on the earth that might be in need of it, and there's plenty. And as you breathe out, without trying to push it out, just feel like it's just naturally emanating from you, just like the perfume of a flower emanates. The flower doesn't have to do anything. And you're just kind of holding the whole earth in this emanation of love and compassion from your heart. And I'll just be quiet for a little bit and just gently experience this for a little bit. Okay, and now gently bring your awareness back to being here and open your eyes and just sense, see if you can sense a difference not only in how you feel, but does the atmosphere of the room feel any different to you? See if you notice a difference. And if you do, the only thing that happened to bring that about was each of us just had an intention that we held gently on our breath, and just that simple intention, I would wager if someone just walked in here now that knew nothing about us or what we're doing, they would probably say, it feels really good in here. It's just a really nice vibe, or however they might put it. So this shows that our consciousness can have an effect not just on ourselves and our environment. And I won't go into detail here, but one scientist who studied subtle energy found that in research where intentions were stored in a particular environment, there was a change in the physics of the environment, that there was more energy there instead of, and there was more order. And it's like that just that linking of a more subtle level to the physical level actually brought more life to the surroundings. So we can have a tremendous impact just by our own consciousness. Now let's try a second experiment. I would like for each of you to think of someone in your life that is a challenging person for you. And I'll be surprised if you can't think of at least one. But if there's more than one, pick the most challenging one. And what I want you to do this time is to close your eyes and just imagine that person, that you're in the presence of that person. And now see if you can shift your consciousness and see if you can put yourself in that person's consciousness. What does the world feel like to that person? How do they see you? How do they see and feel and perceive the other people? So let's just do that for a little bit. Okay? And now, come back to imagining that you're there with that person, and do you see them in a bit of a different light? Perhaps you understand maybe they've had a lot of hurt in their lives, or maybe they haven't learned how to relate very well to people, and everybody always reacts to them, and so they're kind of feeding off that negative reaction. And perhaps you can see past that surface appearance and believe that in every being there's a fundamental goodness, even if it might be covered up dramatically by what's on the surface level. And you can trust, as William Schultz, who I read from in the first reading, what he said. He said, the blessings of life are available to everyone, not just the chosen or the saved. And so a question you might ask yourself, or a practice that you could take with you from this little exercise, is can you make your heart large enough so there's room in it and for compassion and understanding, even for that difficult person and other difficult people that you have in your life. And if you're able to do this, then you're doing what Rumi suggests. He said, be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So what would it be like to look at situations like that instead of, oh my God, I just got to get away from this person. I wish they would move, or I would move, or change my job, or whatever. But there's some opportunity arising in your manner of dealing with this person, even if they don't act any differently towards you, for a breakthrough. And I really believe that there is no situation or circumstance in our life that's not potentially a portal or an opening to the sacred, for something to emerge, for a breakthrough to take place. And oftentimes it's in the most difficult situations in our life where there's the potential for the greatest breakthrough to take place. So if you look back on your life, how many times have there been situations that there seemed no purpose for, and many years later you realized if it hadn't been for that situation and what was gained for how you dealt with it, that something very positive would never have happened down the road. So I want to share with you a story about a little girl that I saw in my psychology practice not very long ago. When I saw her, she was 9 years old, and she had been treated for a large brain tumor. And it had been mostly removed, but it's the kind that grows back, and they were going to have to do radiation. And she was blind in her left eye. That had nothing to do with the tumor. And so in getting the history from the mother, what I found out was at the age of 5, she had been accidentally shot in that eye with a BB and blinded. And, I mean, what a terrible thing. There's no two ways around that. But because of that accident, she had been followed by her ophthalmologist over the years, and the ophthalmologist spotted the signs of this tumor that was asymptomatic. In other words, it probably would have been never diagnosed until it was too late, and because of that, it saved her life. So it's like when you step back, sometimes when you see what seems to be so tragic, that in the big picture of things, that somehow something very meaningful emerges from that. So I'd like to share some quotes from Hazrat Khan that reinforce the idea that life is really our greatest teacher. He says, the Sufi's church, therefore, is every place where he stands. The dome of that church is the sky, and the floor of that church is his thoughts. The whole scripture of the Sufi is all this life that teaches lessons from morning till evening. Therefore, the literature of all those great prophets and teachers for him is the interpretation which they have taken from this life, interpreted in the language of the people of that time. And yet that wisdom for the Sufi is not limited to a certain period. That wisdom has always been, therefore is, and will always be. For he finds the source of that wisdom, which he considers most sacred, is to be found in the heart of man. And he also says, for the eye of the seer, every leaf of the tree is a page of the holy book that contains divine revelation, and he is inspired every moment of his life by constantly reading and understanding the holy script of nature. So there's nothing that's lost in our lives. Every experience presents us with an opportunity for some breakthrough to take place, and we can enhance our capacity to participate in the transformation, not just in ourselves, but the whole world. So instead of being in a reactive state of consciousness when we get into difficult circumstances, perhaps we can aspire to be the way St. Francis describes, to be an instrument of peace, And where there's hatred, to sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Spirituality in the trenches, what better place for it?